So we have quorum and we're good. All right. Welcome everyone to this week's installment of the Land Use and Ethics Subcommittee. I am again your host, Chairman Vaughn Stewart. We only have one bill on our calendar today, which is HB 23. We have discussed it already a couple of weeks ago. This is the mobile home bill from yours truly. And if I'm going to ask Matt, our trustee counsel, to pull up and share his screen if possible, what the latest universe is for the amendment, so that we can just kind of walk through to make sure everyone understands what we may end up voting on today. Okay, so let's see here. I believe that we emailed all this to y'all too, but if you don't want to have to pull that up yourselves, feel free to follow along. So Matt, I can take a crack at explaining sort of what some of these are if you'll just sort of help me follow along, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. So this here, number one, is just technical changes. This number two here, if you'll scroll down a little bit more, Matt, you'll see this is all existing section of the code. And then here, right there, a little bit more. We changed per actually Horizon's request and suggestion. We changed the number of relocation months that people can receive from 10 to 12. So this is a situation where there is a change of use. An existing Maryland law, residents of a mobile home community would be eligible for 10 months of relocation expenses. And then under this change, we're actually upping it from 10 to 12, which is consistent with the amount of notice that they also must be given. And then, as you can also see a couple of lines up there and see, we're lowering the eligibility to be more inclusive of more parks from 38 sites, which is an oddly specific number in current law, to 10 sites. So the smaller mobile homes with at least 10 homes on them will be eligible for the relocation expenses, which is, again, a Horizon suggestion. And then if you want to continue going down, Matt, we've got several changes here to the kind of the meat of the bill. So here in A, we're basically changing the percentages a little bit here to say that a manufacturing home community, basically, in order to put a bid in, the organization has to comprise homeowners of at least 75% of the community. And then here in B, we're basically adding additional exemptions here. We've tried to be careful with what we include to make sure we're not sort of creating too big of a loophole. C is kind of the core part of the bill, or the core part of the amendments at least, which says that a sale under the covered under the provisions of the bill may proceed without this extended opportunity for a homeowners organization to make an offer on the community if the purchaser files an affidavit in the land records affirming two things. One, you'll see in A1 that the purchaser has to promise, as we've discussed before, that they'll keep the community as a community for 5 years. And then in 2, you're seeing that they're making a rent agreement to not increase the rent more than 10%. We talked before that 10% is lower probably than some of the advocates, or higher than some of the advocates would have wanted, or maybe that I even would have wanted. But what we're seeing from some of these kind of bad actors in this space is they're actually jacking up rents far in excess of 10%. And so we're hoping that 10% is going to capture a lot of these people that we're trying to capture, because they're doing like 70, 80, 120% rent increases. I'll pause there because I believe Delegate Foley has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to go back to the 75.
Yeah.
We kind of went over that real fast. The 75%, where was that? Comprises at least 75% of the lots in the manufactured housing community.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that, I guess I understand. What would the rest of the land be used for? Would that be like common area? Is that?
So
give me an example of where that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah. So that's not quite what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is what is the definition of an organization, a homeowners organization. We're defining it here in this section.
Okay.
And we're saying that to create a valid organization, we need 75% of the homeowners. And it's confusing because they're homeowners in the sense that they obviously own their mobile home, but they lease the land under it. So they're both basically renters and homeowners, but 75% of those homeowners must agree to create a homeowners organization.
I guess the part about the lots, the wording, the lots, confused me.
Yeah, the lot thing, we just wanted to make it clear that these are actual, it's one lot, one vote, basically, is what we're trying to say.
It's not, they don't own the lots.
Right.
Oh, but they lease.
They leased a lot. Okay. They leased a lot. And we just wanted to make sure it's one lot, one vote, 75%. We're not including people who like sublet and that kind of thing. Okay, great. Thank you. Yep. Okay. Cool. Thank you. And then I guess if we'll continue to go down back to D, this relates to the notice requirements, basically just making sure that that folks in the community had an opportunity to know what's going on. In E, we're basically limiting the liability of a community owner for violation to some extent. You'll see that there are some penalty provisions later on, but in this point, we're limiting liability because we don't want sort of ticky-tack violations to be held against the community owner. In F, we're altering the calculation of homeowners necessary to commit to purchasing to also be 75%. So it's 75 of 75%, meant to approximate basically slightly more than half of the overall members of the community. And then in G, this relates to the timeline for a homeowners organization to obtain financing. H requires DHCD to maintain a list of certain organizations on its website. This is a list of organizations, as you'll see, quote unquote, available to assist homeowners with financing for the purchase of a manufactured home community. This is just meant to provide some insight and some knowledge for homeowners where at least they could go on DHCD's website if they need some help to obtain financing. If you go to I, it basically requires the community owner or purchaser, then the purchaser, this is the buyer, basically is putting the affidavit in the land records. They were also required to provide notice of the affidavit to the homeowners, and post a copy of the affidavit in a public area in the manufactured housing community. This is kind of common sense. This is basically that if a buyer is going to promise that they're going to keep the community as a community, and they did that, and in order to sort of avoid the provisions in the bill about the longer time horizon, then we want them to let the residents know that they've made this commitment. Otherwise, the residents would never know because they're not going to be digging around into the land records and searching the deeds for fun, presumably. And then finally, J, this is just an amendment to basically, previously in the bill, we had penalties for community owners, but since we're adding this whole affidavit component, we also have to add a corresponding penalty where if you're a buyer who says, yeah, I'm for sure not going to raise the rent, or yeah, for sure, I'm never changing this, or at least I'm not going to change this for 5 years, and then you go back on that promise, then you will be liable just as a community owner would for any other violations of the bill. So that's that. Basically, in summary, as we've discussed before, lots of different moving parts amendments. Nothing really substantially has changed since the last time we talked about this. Essentially, at its core, what the bill says is that if you buy one of these communities and you're willing to make two promises, one, you promise that you're not going to raise rent for more than 10% for 3 years, and two, you're not going to change the nature of the park for 5. If you were willing to make those promises, everything will proceed as normal under current law. But if you're not willing to make or able to make one of those two promises, then all these other provisions in the bill swoop in and become effective, and they essentially elongate the process and provide a little bit more notice to homeowners to give folks an opportunity to come together and collectively purchase the community in order to essentially avoid being evicted or avoid a monstrous rent increase. Delegate Long.
Hey, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I think I just got the answer to my question. It was just referencing the 10%. I was wondering if that was the initial percentage that we had agreed upon or have been discussing, but
yeah, it's the same what we discussed last time. It's 10% annually for 3 years. And like I said, some of the advocate communities, I think they would love for me to mention again that they are not thrilled with 10% and they're not necessarily endorsing 10% as an acceptable rent increase. However, we're hoping that that is going to be high enough to allow sort of good faith actors to raise rents reasonable levels, that they have to make significant improvements to the park, but low enough of a number to sort of essentially provide a chilling effect for bad actors who are gobbling up these communities with essentially just ill intent. And those people, if you look at news reports, you can just Google like venture capital rent increase mobile home or something along those lines, and you can see what some of these rent increases have been across the country. It's scary stuff. Delegate Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On G, amendment number G.
Yep.
That one first, and then go to I. G first. Now, the 105 days, that is the time frame where the community gets confirmation from some lending institution that they do qualify to purchase this park. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that's correct. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct. So under the bill is drafted, they would have not, the homeowners organization would have not more than 105 days after the date of agreement to obtain financing, and then 45 days after obtaining financing to close on the purchase. It was discovered that 105 days is a doable timeline, both to obtain the financing and close on the purchase. So that's the change here, is it's reducing that timeline to not more than 105 days.
Great. So it's 105 days to obtain financing, and then 45 days after that to move forward with the purchase.
No, it's 105 days to obtain financing and close on the purchase.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. All right. And then to go now to I. Amendment I.
Yep.
30 days. What does this do again? Oh, this is the notice.
Yeah.
So the notice goes first class mail that goes to the address of the lot owner. Yeah. Okay. I got you.
Yeah. And
right.
just to let the subcommittee know, this amendment here, this notice provision with regard to the affidavit is written to parallel other similar notice provisions that are used for these mobile home parks on sale of the park.
Gotcha.
So there's a 30 days before the sale is completed, there's a notice provision generally that would go out, and it would be posted somewhere in the park that the park is being sold.
Okay.
That was changed by another bill, I believe, a year ago.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And in terms of the finance, there's a reimbursement, some kind of reimbursement that takes place in his bill somewhere.
The relocation expenses, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, relocate. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's existing laws that basically, if you do have a change of use, owners under current law have to pay 10 months of relocation expenses. And actually, it was Horizon's idea to actually say, well, since they're getting 12 months notice, let's actually up it to 12 months of relocation expenses, just to again deter people from changing the use and trying to keep this affordable housing as affordable housing.
Yeah, after you just said that, you just jogged my memory. Yes, indeed, that is correct.
Okay.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you for the questions as always. So I mean, I think overall, I'll just say that I commend, both the advocates and Horizon for working with us on these amendments. I think we ended up getting in a good place. I don't think everybody got everything they wanted, but I do think that this bill, if it becomes law, if we can get the House and the Senate to agree on something, I think it really will make Maryland probably the least attractive state for some of these bad actors to come into in the country. Yes, Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we voting on this today?
I am willing to accept a motion. Yeah.
Okay, I move the amendments.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of the amendments, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it looks like the amendments have passed. Do we have a motion on the bill?
Amended, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Holmes has moved favorable. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion on the bill as amended before we vote? Seeing no hands up. All those in favor of the bill as amended, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? The bill carries. Congratulations. We have passed our second bill out of the subcommittee.
Great, Mr. Chair. Now go hug that baby.
I know,
Thank
this
you,
is
Mr. Chair.
a great present to me. Thank you all very much. Y'all have a good lunch, and I will see you very soon.